The global arms trade is worth in excess of $138 billion annually. Just about 1% of that is the illegal arms trade, which is more than enough to fulfill the needs of the cartels, gangs, the mob, rebel groups, and so on. This illegal share of the arms trade is very interesting because it's responsible for the vast majority of gun-related crimes everywhere in the world. And this is what I wanted to investigate, because where do these weapons come from? Who really ends up with them? And how does the logistics of the illegal arms trade really work? And what I found was shocking. See, it's an intricate shadow economy made possible by countries you both would and wouldn't expect. But it turns out there are three ways weapons end up in the illicit arms trade, where the geographic location of the end user determines which of the three methods is used. Latin America prefers one of these, Africa and Europe another, and Asia a third. But what I didn't expect was that huge piles of these illegal arms continue to end up in the hands of the public. People who have nothing to do with these criminal groups and instead have a completely different motive. So in this video, I'll explain how the illegal arms trade works in every major geographical hotspot for illegal arms. At the end, you'll know how the world's illicit arms trade really works. Now, if you like me, love to learn about how our world works and often fall into rabbit holes about history, philosophy, psychology, economics, the kind of deep knowledge that explains what's going on beneath the surface of the world, well, I have amazing news, because I finally found a partner who shares my vision of explaining complex topics in an interesting and visually appealing way. And that's Imprint. Imprint is a beautifully designed visual learning app that turns the world's most important ideas into quick, interactive lessons you can actually remember. Instead of doom scrolling, I'll open Imprint for just 5 minutes and dive into something like habits and get key lessons about how to stay productive using quotes from my favorite book on habits, Atomic Habits by James Clear, which helps things stick quite a bit more than normal. The visual and interactive approach to learning is ingenious. Every lesson feels like a motion graphic explainer, and it's based on the science of learning, so it actually sticks. So if you want to make your screen time count, learn the kind of ideas that shape our world, and support the channel in the process, click the link in the description or scan the QR code you see on screen, and you can try Imprint for free for 7 days. And if you like it, get 20% off an annual membership. Thank you to Imprint for sponsoring this video. So let's start with the Americas. Here, the vast majority of all the arms in the illicit arms trade originates in two countries. The United States of America is the first and most important of the two. The other is located in Latin America and will be revealed in just a moment. But first we need to understand how important and significant the US is in arming organized crime groups with what initially was legally purchased guns. By one estimate, around 200,000 firearms are trafficked from the US into Mexico each year. And according to a 2025 report to Mexico's Congress, at least 74% of illegal weapons seized from organized crime came through trafficking routes originating in the US. So how does this work? Well, it's surprisingly simple. Law enforcement data shows that most cross-border gun seizures involve fewer than 5 firearms at once. That's because it's quite easy for straw buyers in the US, often paid by cartel intermediaries, to purchase guns from gun shops or gun shows, exploiting America's relatively lax gun purchase laws, to then smuggle them across the border concealed in vehicles or cargo. Popular models include semi-automatic rifles, AR-15s and AK variants, pistols, and 50 caliber sniper rifles, which cartel hitmen use to outgun Mexican police. Rifles in particular have become increasingly prevalent, with a 105% increase in rifles traced in Mexico from 2016 to 2022. US-sourced firearms have also shown up further south, arming gangs in Central America and the Caribbean. US-sourced firearms have also shown up further south, arming gangs in Central America and the Caribbean. For example, Jamaican and Honduran gangs prize US-made handguns, and Haiti's expanding gang warfare has been fueled by US guns smuggled via Florida. In Latin America too, small arms manufactured in the US and Brazil during past decades now circulate widely among cartels and gangs. But for Latin America, it's not really Brazil that's their supplier. It's a completely different and unexpected country. Paraguay. See, Paraguay has more permissive gun laws than the rest of Latin America. That legal access, plus cheaper prices and porous borders, is how many guns bought in Paraguay are smuggled into Brazil and Argentina. Africa. Most illegal guns in Africa actually come from state arsenals and surplus stockpiles, notably looted Libyan and post-Cold War stockpiles. And then some smaller amount of guns diverted from legal exports, as well as local manufacturing and theft. Interestingly, in African Sahel, a recent study found only 7% of illicit weapons came from post-2011 Libyan smuggling, and most were decades-old arms diverted from West African National Army's stockpiles during rebellions and state collapse. In fact, about 1/4 of arms captured from Sahel militant groups were formerly in the arsenals of Mali, Burkina Faso, or Niger's military before being seized in combat. But there is another way weapons have entered Africa's illicit arms trade. We all know North Korea sells weapons to rogue states and militias to survive sanctions, but what most people don't know is that North Korean weapons haven't just been exported into Africa. In some cases, they were manufactured there. Take Namibia. In the mid-2000s, a North Korean state company quietly helped build an arms and ammunition factory just outside Windhoek. On paper, it was a random construction project, but in reality was a secret weapons plant. Years later, Namibia actually admitted to the UN that North Korean teams built and equipped the facility, which is a direct violation of UN sanctions. For years, North Korean engineers helped set up and upgrade 2 weapons manufacturing complexes, one for rifles and military equipment, another to produce ammunition. Again, officially these were industrial cooperation projects. In Uganda, North Korean military advisors have long trained local forces, and reports show they've assisted at Ugandan arms factories and repair facilities. And if that rings a bell, it should, because this is the exact scenario exposed in the documentary The Mole, where undercover footage captured North Korean officials negotiating a deal to build a hidden underground weapons factory on an African island. A secret plant producing everything from rifles to missile components sealed under farmland so the world would never detect it. It's fair to say the North Koreans have done a good job, since we have no clue how many of the arms were produced by them in these nations. But production is one thing. Getting them to the end user without detection is a completely different game. So how do those guns move around in Africa without detection? Well, it turns out there are 4 primary ways. First is the trans-Saharan land routes. After Libya's collapse and other stockpile leaks, cheap rifles and ammo became available, and old caravan trails used for salt and trade became illicit arms routes. Convoys, 4x4s, and camel vehicle caravans move arms from Libya, Mali, and Niger across the Sahara into Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and onward. Checkpoints are avoided by simply driving around them, and if they can't avoid a checkpoint, bribes do the trick. Then we have the coastal and maritime transfers. Here, small dhows and fishing boats move arms along the West African coast and up the Gulf of Guinea, where larger ships can conceal cargo in ports with weak inspection. The third and last one takes use of the lake and river corridors. This is mostly used in Central Africa, where arms move across lakes like Lake Tanganyika and Lake Chad, supplying eastern DRC, Burundi, and northern Mozambique corridors. Okay, so we know where the guns come from and how they move, but who ends up with them? Who's the end user here? Well, there are some organized crime and urban gangs who do buy them, but it's mostly groups of people who fight for what they believe is right, like jihadist and insurgent groups, warlords, militias, and rebel groups. Which brings me to the Middle East. In the Middle East, illegal guns flow from a handful of places, using routes that are quite simplistic. Most guns originate from state sponsors, battlefield captures, diverted legal shipments, and a steady trickle from surplus markets, which refers to leftover weapons from past wars or overproduction, that are legally sold off by governments, armies, or factories, but then quietly leak into illegal hands through brokers, corruption, or falsified paperwork. In this region, one country stands out from the rest: Iran. Iran has become one of the region's biggest covert suppliers, shipping rifles, missiles, and components to allies and proxies like Houthis in Yemen, militias in Iraq, and Hezbollah in Lebanon. These shipments are often hidden in commercial cargo or run on small dhows and have been intercepted repeatedly by naval patrols. Smugglers often use unflagged dhows and fishing boats to covertly ferry weapons. The US and their allied navies have intercepted at least 18 maritime shipments of Iranian weapons bound for Yemen through the ripples between between 2015 and 2024. Some vessels carry relatively low-tech cargo like crates of AK-47s and machine guns, while others hide advanced arms such as anti-tank guided missiles, surface-to-air missiles, and ballistic missile parts beneath fishing gear. Another player is the now very familiar North Korea. See, North Korean-made weapons have surfaced in the hands of non-state actors from Hamas in Gaza to Houthi militants in Yemen. UN investigators even reported attempts by North Korean brokers to supply small arms to the Houthis via intermediaries in the Middle East. Asia. In Asia, you have a plethora of porous borders, making it trivially easy to move illicit arms. And that's important because the end users list is quite long. It includes groups like Myanmar's ethnic armed organizations such as Kachin, Karen, and Arakan, as well as insurgent groups in the southern Philippines. Along with the urban criminal networks in South Asia and Southeast Asia, the origins of these illicit guns range from the DPRK to China and looted stockpiles of other nations. An example of when state stockpiles were captured is when in August 2021 the Afghan security forces collapsed, the government fell, and the Taliban took power, who seized bases, depots, and large amounts of US supplied kit in the process. Within weeks, they were parading captured American-made vehicles and weapons in Kabul. But looting guns from stockpiles is just one of the ways guns move into the illegal arms trade in Asia. In Asia, the trade in illegal guns follows the same paths as the rest of the underground economy. Old smuggling trails, crowded sea lanes, and porous borders where governments have little reach. The biggest artery runs through the Afghan and Pakistani frontier, where weapons left behind after decades of war flow freely across the tribal lands. From there, some travel west into Iran and Iraq, others north into Central Asia. They move quickly, packed in trucks or strapped under loads of legitimate cargo handled by brokers. Farther east, though, another cluster of routes ties China to Southeast Asia. See, Chinese-made rifles and ammunition slip across the border into Myanmar, then travel through jungle tracks and along the Mekong River into Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. In the Golden Triangle, those weapons mix with the region's booming trade in meth and heroin. The same brokers who move drugs also move guns, because both bring cash and both depend on corruption. Down at the coast, shipping containers and small boats carry another stream of weapons through the South China Sea and the Strait of Malacca. These are often factory-made guns or parts mixed into normal cargo and re-exported multiple times before reaching their buyers. Also, good luck catching a ship carrying illegal arms here, as the Strait of Malacca facilitates the passage of over 40% of global trade. It's like finding a nail in a haystack. In archipelagos like the Philippines and Indonesia, smugglers use fast boats to hop between islands, dropping off small loads to gangs and militant groups scattered along the coast. It's just too easy here. There's so many islands, so much coastline. It's just a mecca of drugs and guns flowing from country to country. But anyway, the rest of the continent runs on local supply. In Pakistan's Khiba region, gunsmiths turn out handmade AK copies that feed both domestic markets and cross-border sales. In Myanmar, rebel workshops build rifles and ammunition to arm ethnic militias. In the Philippines, peltic guns, crude, cheap handguns made in backyard foundries, fill the gap for anyone who can't buy legally. The result is a patchwork network of supply chains that all feed the same demand. Insurgents fighting wars, gangs protecting drug routes, and local power brokers arming whoever can pay. Now to Europe. In Europe, the illegal arms trade is quite different from the rest of the world, because here, most of the black market gun trade isn't driven by new wars, it's driven by the leftovers of old ones. See, the biggest source is still the Western Balkans, where entire armories from the 1990s conflicts were never fully collected or destroyed. An estimated 6 million small arms were circulating after those wars, and as of recent years, only about half have been collected or destroyed. That leaves perhaps 3 million illegal guns in the Balkans, ranging from pistols to military rifles and grenades. Due to this, Balkan guns are coveted on global black markets because they're abundant and cheap. Over the years, those same weapons have leaked north and west, tucked inside trucks, wedged between legitimate cargo, or driven through the night across barely monitored border crossings into the European Union. As one of the hallmarks of the European Union is open borders that are not controlled. Once something is in Europe, it's pretty easily moved around. It doesn't matter if it's a gang or the mob in Italy, they will get their hands on those guns it's pretty easy. Another stream flows from farther east, from the remnants of the old Soviet Union. Vast Cold War stockpiles, the AK pattern rifles, machine guns, and ammunition that once armed half the world, still sit in depots across Eastern Europe. Some of it is legally sold off as surplus, but plenty end up in the hands of brokers who specialize in falsifying paperwork, changing serial numbers, and making crates of industrial equipment that somehow turn out to be rifles. Those flows merge with the Balkan routes and slip into Europe through the same logistics networks used for cigarettes, drugs, and people. But Europe also feeds its own problem from the inside. Guns that are perfectly legal in one country are stolen, resold, or diverted into the grey market of another. And in the last few years, a new player has entered the mix. 3D printed ghost guns. Cheap to make, untraceable, and easy to ship in pieces through the postal system. They've started showing up in police seizures from Spain to the Netherlands. Together, these channels form a quiet web of supply that keeps Europe awash in illicit arms. But who really ends up with these guns? Well, it's no surprise that it's organized crime groups who use them to protect drug routes, street gangs fighting over territory, and occasionally extremist cells and lone attackers who want a weapon they can't be traced back to. But in a video like this, I need to mention Russia, and they too leverage the grey market. Since its defense industry is sanctioned, Moscow has reportedly arranged to acquire munitions from North Korea for use in Ukraine. And in late 2022, US intelligence disclosed that North Korea shipped artillery shells to Russia's Wagner mercenaries. Iran also supplies arms in the shape of drones, missile components, and ballistic rocket systems. So there you have it. That's the global illegal arms trade and how it works. If you don't mind, since you've made it this far, please subscribe down below. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.